Hi everyone, I am Caroline Hill, editor-in-chief of Legal IT Insider. Welcome to the latest episode of Charting Change in Legal. I am here with
Ari Kaplan. I'm an analyst that covers the legal industry, and I'm looking forward to our something of a countdown to Legal Week discussion today, and excited about the conference.
so okay, let's just kick this off by saying Ari is going to the conference Legal Week. I am not. So I have got huge sour grapes, but in the interest of everyone listening in and having the right content for the right time, we're gonna focus on Legal Week, despite the fact I am.
Although, to be clear, I happen to live here, so it isn't that difficult. And I have not been to Legal Geek in London, for example, which is an event that I would like to attend. So sometimes you're close and sometimes not. Although I should say that I have been going to this conference. I practiced in New York City for nearly 9 years, from 1997 to 2006. And for many of those years, I would walk over to this hotel, the New York Hilton in Midtown, to try to get story ideas to pitch to David Snow or Sean Doherty or Monica Bay at ALM in an effort to try to get an article published. So now 20 it's been 20 years or some crazy number. It's funny to continue to go and to try to figure out, what's changed, what are the ideas that are interesting to people. I'm not so much looking for story ideas anymore, but certainly trying to figure out what are the trends. And I always look forward to that kind of excitement. And I also have to say, I'm really glad it's back to being end of January, first day of February. It
Are
was
you? Why?
moved.
Why? It's going to be freezing.
It
It's going to snow like
it
it
will
always.
actually, according to the forecast, it isn't going to be as cold as it's been in New York in the last couple of weeks. And also, Legal Week tends to be the spark of the legal tech year. And if that spark does not happen until the end of March, it really pushes a lot of opportunities forward, and it tends to compress things. And then you start interfering with the ABA Tech Show, and then it moves into Clock Now, which has a big position in May, and even into ILTA over the summer. And so Legal Week being back really starts the year earlier. And for someone like me, and also for someone like you, the news comes out sooner, launches are sooner. There's just a lot more
Yeah.
excitement and enthusiasm and activity. And so I'm happy it's happening.
Yeah. I get you. I get you. I'm doing so. We'll come on to. I'm really looking forward to hearing what you're looking forward to doing right there at the conference, and it's something that I always go to. So I know you say about Legal Geek, but I've not missed this for years. But in any event, I'm doing a series of on-camera interviews, chatting to people about. There's always the releases. You got the new products. People want to talk about. It's really varied. It's funny how vendors particularly obviously use it as an opportunity to announce all sorts. So I'm speaking soon to iManage about they're talking about their new conference in the US, and I'm speaking to there's a patent co-pilot company called Killy Technology. They've just launched this new co-pilot called Da Vinci. We were talking about that. We've been talking. I've already talked to ProSearch about some new Gen AI technology, Gen AI functionality that they've released. It's really varied, right? That's what I like about it. But there's inevitably going to be a big e-discovery theme, as there always is, which fits right into your sweet spot, right?
Well, I'd like to think that my sweet spot is holistically legal. So I noticed some interesting commentary on online, for example, on LinkedIn, people talking about, oh, the theme is going from e-discovery to generative AI. But really, a lot of it will be the incorporation of generative AI into e-discovery, or the incorporation of generative AI into CLM, or the incorporation of generative AI into document management. And I think that that's much more about what we'll see. I don't know that it's going to be so much an e-discovery show. And over the years, I think it's moved away from that and much more into the broader, more complete look, a portfolio look at legal technology as opposed to just for a specific use case. Although I do know about e-discovery and have been lucky to be part of that community for many years. And the folks who have been in it for a while are really the experts in AI. And so I think I'm so glad to see a lot of the people who really do have credibility and have been using some form of artificial intelligence for much, much longer than the public has known about generative AI. I'm so happy to see those folks featured and really sharing the benefit of their experience. That's really the theme this year, frankly, is just, what are the use cases? How are we using it? Who's making mistakes? Are the mistakes so catastrophic that we should never use it again? I think there's a lot of questions happening, and people are kind of trying to embrace the idea that this is sort of perfectly imperfect.
So I had this exact conversation yesterday. I was saying there's such an opportunity, and this was sparked by a conversation at the end of the year I had with Joy Heath-Rush, who is CEO of ILTA, as most people know. She was saying, I asked her what her hope would be, for perhaps this year, and in terms of how, as an industry, we start to be a bit more perhaps sensible in the way we talk about Gen AI or learn about it, interact with it. And she said one of her hopes is that the e-discovery community helps the rest of us or the rest of them, depending on where you're listening in from, to understand some of the learnings from things like technology assisted review, right? So the e-discovery sector, as you just said rightly, has been doing some amazingly progressive things with AI for years, and had to go through some similar learnings in terms of, when TAR was first introduced as a sort of something that we might do on a normal day-to-day basis. It really was, what the reaction was. It was case law, there was discussion, there was, oh my God, this is never going to be accepted. And then sure enough, now it's quite normal. It's a time saving, cost saving exercise. And so it'd be really interesting to get more reflection, more people who went through that to start really reflecting on that and the learnings from that, I think.
Well, it's also elevated the practice in many ways. When I first graduated law school, I spent time doing document review. I did document review before I started my official job, and then once I started my official job, and that was a big part of what a lot of law firm associates did in the very beginning. And now that isn't really necessary, but those folks can rely on some type of technology. And the technology today is very good across the board to do some of that initial work. And then they can apply much more analytical thinking. Now, I do believe that technology, AI, any sort of advanced tool that is being developed now will replace jobs. I think that we are tricking ourselves into believing that the future will not involve replacement of jobs, but this is historically what's happened. And so the question is not will it replace jobs, it's just how should I adapt, how much better will my job be? And I think that these tools have really improved the job of more junior people, made the work more satisfying, given them an opportunity to be more interactive, more collaborative, and that tends to lead to stickiness. People stay longer. They're not looking for the next opportunity. They're just thinking, wow, this is actually pretty interesting. Not only is this organization an innovative place where they apply technology where it's necessary, but it gives me the chance to kind of exercise muscles in terms of critical thinking and just working with others. And I like that. And I think hopefully the themes at Legalweek will touch on that.
Yeah, no, you're true. It's so true. I do think that it's so interesting. Tar, big outcry. Contract review when we had Kira, yeah, to a certain extent, but it was more just a case of measuring, right? Like measuring a real life exercise versus Kira, or as Kira was obviously the forerunner, seeing whether it did things right, and just sort of, needing to learn to trust it. I think one of the things that really perhaps the discovery sector does better. Although I can't say I speak from authority on this, but this is what I've been told, and I'm trying to think whether I sort of whether I've written anything about this. But they're better at measuring, right? Obviously in terms of you having those feedback loops. Does this work? How does it work? What time savings? What are the ROI? Being much more scientific and meticulous about it, rather than just perhaps throwing it against the wall, seeing what works. I get the impression that their approach is much more successful in terms of longevity for working out what we should be doing and why.
Well, you're absolutely right, because you can measure precision, you can measure recall, you can incorporate data science into a process that has historically been just about looking at something and see if it's similar to something else. You have a machine do that, and you can have a human being do something better. I actually am looking forward to a number of discussions because you and I have this wonderful opportunity you're doing your video series, and I'll have some meetings at Legal Week. We have this wonderful opportunity to hear directly from the people who are developing these tools, the
Yeah.
people who are on the ground, not only testing them and getting it right and getting it wrong, but also putting it out into the universe and seeing how people are deploying it. One of the things that I think often comes out of these events is that somebody ends up showing you how you can deploy it beyond whatever the intended use case was, and then kind of magic happens. And I really like that about this particular show. And I also, again, will just go back to saying I like the fact that it's happening earlier, because it will give people more of a roadmap and more time to follow that roadmap.
Do you know one thing I'm curious? So with all the announcements that are already starting to happen and they're going to come during the conference, I'm curious as to what sort of things will be announced, because there was an announcement recently that this company had a generative AI strategy. It's like a big announcement, and I was like, what does that even say? I don't even know what that means. I know that everybody wants to be seen to be associated. I do hope that the announcements that are made are to be helpful to the market. I'm not just being a tinker, even though I am, right? So I hope that they're substantive. I hope that people are being thoughtful this year and giving some guidance, and not. I hope that there's less fluffiness in the announcements that are made.
Well, I will tell you that I just finished interviewing 35 decision makers in e-discovery. I do this annual e-discovery unfiltered report, and I finish it prior to Legal Week. The fact that it was 2 months earlier this year just sort of pushed that and accelerated that time frame. But I finished it, and there were a number of folks. So I typically will speak to decision makers at sizable organizations, and there were definitely people who have still have a need for on-premises tools, still are not necessarily wildly embracing generative AI or testing tools, want to see what their peers are doing before they decide to jump in, are considering some proofs of concept this year. So attendees really need to decide between their needs, what they're hearing directly from their peers who are in the trenches, and whatever they're seeing in terms of signage or media coverage, because there's a real conflict there sometimes, and you want to make sure that you're getting the best information. And luckily, I'm hosting some dinners, and I'm even hosting a run at 6 a.m. on Wednesday morning in Central Park.
Yes,
And
sorry.
so people show up. People, it's really quite something when you go down to the lobby and you see all these people there, and they're just, some people are having coffee, and some people are just like ready to go. And
Oh my gosh.
I know it even fascinates me to this point. It's fascinating when it happens in Las Vegas at 6 o'clock in the morning, and it's just as fascinating when it happens in New York City in the end of January. So the one thing I will say though is that
Wait! Before you
yeah,
move off the run,
yeah,
will you forget? Or I can come back to the run.
no, come back to it now. Yeah.
I want to know why you posted a picture of yourself like in all that gear, right? You look like
So
you were dressed for a scuba dive.
well, I was running. I happen to have posted a picture of myself on LinkedIn, which I typically don't do, but I thought it was kind of funny. I had gone running that morning, and it was 18 degrees here. So it was just like obscenely cold. And Legal Week, as I understand it, next week will be warmer than that, although I don't think it's going to be warm. It won't rain, but I just thought it was just a funny picture because I
It was
was
very
wearing
funny.
several
You
pairs of
looked like
gloves
you were
and
dressed.
a ski
Yeah.
mask, and I didn't have it on, but I wear a headlamp because it's dark out when I'm running. And I had actually skipped running several days because it was too icy.
I wonder
We
because
had
it's not safe if you're running. You
Yeah,
don't
we
want to
had
slip.
basically been enveloped in a
Yeah.
cloak of ice for several days, and so in the dark, it's really hard to
Oh
figure
yeah.
out whether something is just a wet ground or ice, and
No, that's dangerous. It was
who
very
needs
funny.
that?
All you could see was your eyes.
Right.
But and then I think that was your kind of like, you gonna come running with me at Legal Week? I'm like, oh my gosh, if
Well,
everyone was
it
doing it,
was
that picture would
yes,
put me off. No, I'm
yes,
not
yes.
coming.
Although I will say that part of the reason I posted that was in an effort to promote our discussions on the virtual lunch. I don't think people made that
What
connection.
discussion was that?
We've been having this very cool series of discussions on a sort of, we call this series Countdown to Legal Week, and I'm doing it with JS Held. And so every day we've been talking about something other than, we've been talking about substantive topics. Like yesterday was about how not to get hacked at Legal Week. So it was about
What does like?
cybersecurity. How not to get how not to use public Wi-Fi, stuff like that,
Oh,
right?
that's
And
interesting.
so, but one day we talked about what to bring, like what to wear and how to, for example, if you're running between meetings that are outside,
Yeah.
they don't have a very good mechanism for checking your coat. You have to go to a coat check, get your coat, check it, get your coat, check it. It's really, so should you bring a coat?
Oh,
The
that's a good practical
the
consideration.
session rooms are very cold, but walking around is very warm. And it was just this very funny discussion. It's like, well, what about comfortable shoes? Well, can you wear comfortable shoes with a suit? Can you wear it with a dress? Like, what about,
Always wear comfortable shoes.
yes, and it was a
Always.
very, very funny conversation. Should you wear, should you wear a suit? Can you get away with like jeans and a cool blazer? And anyway, we
Mm.
were just having this really fun. So the point was, you know, I said, oh, if you're gonna go to Legal Week, don't look like
Yeah.
this guy or something like that. And so it's actually every single day we've talked about something like in terms of meetings. So I
Mm,
I create a Calendly link that's exclusive for Legal Week, and it updates according to what's on my calendar, so that if you're gonna have more than 2 or 3 meetings, you really need a mechanism where people can go and book time that's
yeah.
convenient for them, not necessarily for you, but I I know that the Calendly somehow has some, it's a mildly controversial. I don't understand that controversy, but I still think for the sake of efficiency, I have a Calendly link, and I'm like, I would love to meet with you. I'm open in a lot of different times. I can't list them all here. Just click on this link and pick anything that works for you. And
Yeah.
it's been super, super efficient, and I highly
So
encourage it. So we talked about scheduling meetings one day. It's been fun.
that I can't agree. So I've been doing that this year, right? So I've had the link for a long time. I've had Calendly for a long time. But what I hadn't done is managed to make it so that it was all up to date. So it's all integrated so that it actually reflects when I'm available. Not so I had previously had, for some reason I had clashes. I had this. I hadn't put when I had to take my youngest son to rugby. So then someone would put, like I just wasn't managing it.
Yep.
And so,
Hmm.
and when you do that, it's stressful because you suddenly find something in your diary that you can't make, right? So the key is to go into the, Calendly on the website, and update, make sure that everything's like I do it now, the beginning of the week, just make sure that there's nothing that I haven't thought of. And then it's absolutely brilliant. It's been a game changer for me because to have it, to use it properly is so quick. And I've even things like, so I said to people, oh, if we just want to clarify, like, so with one of the organizers of Legal Week, I just wanted to clarify something. And normally you'd have this bit backwards and forwards. I just went, oh, just let's speak for 5 minutes. Just jump on my Calendly. We don't have to speak even for the full 15 minutes. Like that's the minimum slot. So we actually just spoke for 10 minutes and then we had it sorted. I'm absolutely loving it. It's so efficient.
I've been paying for Calendly for years. And in fact, one of the best features they have is that if you find yourself with a conflict, you could just go in, click reschedule, find
Yeah.
some other time that works for both those. I never even have to know by email. I'll get a message about it, but I don't ever have to interact with you. Whatever
Yeah.
is best for you. I think of it as a courtesy to others, not necessarily because I'm so important, right? I just think that like
That's the
it's
cultural thing that you're talking about. Is that the thing that you were
I
saying?
don't
Like,
really understand. People think that there's something maybe arrogant about me sending you a link to say book what's best for me, and I'm just thinking actually and your point about the calendar is really important, because I also used to find myself, I used a different booking tool, and I used to find myself not paying attention to my calendar as well as I should, and I would have conflicts. And now what I do is, first of all, I Calendly allows you to, pick time. So I never allow booking generally on my calendar before 1 o'clock, so that I know I can always do work in the mornings. If
right.
anybody needs to speak to me at any point, I'm happy to accommodate. But all things being
Mm.
equal, I'd rather speak in the afternoon from a productivity standpoint. When I have an event like Legal Week, I basically shut off the ability to book my usual calendar, which I have at scheduleari.com. How about that one? And I learned that I have to give credit to Brad Blickstein, who has something like schedulebrad.com, and he's like, this is
I'm
great.
doing this
But yeah,
right
you should have schedule calendar. So it's essentially an easy way for you to remember as opposed to, calendly.com/. And so Brad was like, get a cheap domain and make it your link to your Calendly. And I was like, genius, Brad. That's why you're the best.
Oh,
It's
that's
great. So I
amazing.
throw that out. That's my little bit of advice, and I'm giving full credit. And so anyway, what I will basically do is shut down the ability to book me using any other link, create a very specific link for that, and then I know that whole week, and then I'll also clean it up. If I may have, you may sometimes you put, for example, somebody will put on their calendar, it's Caroline's birthday, and it recurs every year, let's say,
Yeah,
for example, on a certain date. And if it happens to be that week, it takes up a spot which isn't very good. And so there's a lot of
yeah.
little calendaring things that you want to make
Interesting.
sure that you're meticulous about. But once you do
Yeah.
it, it's
It's a no-brainer. I did it. The only thing I'd say, we should get paid by Calendly. Do you think we could
mhm,
do a like liquid not a
sponsored by Calendly. That's right.
I said liquid lunch. I don't mean your thing isn't called a liquid lunch, is it? No, it's called a what?
The virtual lunch sponsored by Calendly.
We need to do a
The
so anyway,
liquid
we do not
lunch.
get paid by Calendly on our liquid lunch. But what was that? I've lost my train of thought now.
Well, just
No.
if they could be a sponsor. My sense was you were like, oh, maybe they could be a sponsor. We could have a whole discussion about I don't actually know how people navigate
Oh,
big conferences without figuring out how to create an automated scheduling system.
that's what I was going to say. And that's what I was going to warn against because that's what I did use it for the last conference, which I guess must have been ILSA. And if you're not careful, you just get overrun. Like maybe it wasn't Ilfresh. I think I managed that better. I've used it for a conference before where everybody just put time in my diary. I completely lost control. I think people were forwarding the links, and I found that I had time
Well,
in my diary. I didn't even know who it was. I was looking at my diary, going, I don't even know what's going on.
that's
It
another
was
problem.
terrible.
So actually, you raised a really good point. I've noticed that people will say on LinkedIn, "Hey, if you want to meet with me at Legal Week, just book time." I don't think that's very effective if you are intentional about going. So
Yeah,
I don't post it publicly. But if you said to me, are you going to be at Legal Week? And I would write back immediately and say, I'd love to see you. Here's my link. So
yeah,
you want to be more intentional to make sure it's not that I there are people I don't want to see. It's just that you have limited slots. And also you have to be mindful of getting places.
yeah,
So I typically will avoid I will only for like in certain instances, I will avoid going to another hotel. I will avoid meeting in a suite. All of those things end up taking a 30-minute meeting and turning it into 10 minutes. Just because of
yeah.
the travel time, you're inevitably going to have to run into not have to, but you'll run into somebody, you'll want to say hello to them. Then you're doing this whole, I would love to see you, uh,
It's
scheduleari.com.
there's so little time. I think
Yeah,
this
it
is the
becomes,
trouble.
it
You
becomes
realize, don't you? There's so little time. There's so few slots or meeting slots really. And yeah,
the
it's
the
amazing
last
how
thing I'll say
quick.
about the logistics of this, one of the things that I have found that really streamlines this is to pick a place and never leave that place. And I
Yours
know
is the
that's
executive
the
lounge
executive lounge
in
in the
the
lobby of the
Hilton.
Hilton. It's really the best investment you could make. I'm a big fan. Or if you're Diamond, you get it included, but I'm not Diamond there. And so I just think that you need to figure that out because if you're running, I used to run to coffee shops and lobbies and this place and that place. It it became too chaotic. You sort of disappear from the event for a while if you do that, but if what your purpose is to have like a multifaceted experience where you get to meet with people one on one and also experience the event. I will just if you don't mind me sharing this, but I'm actually signing copies of my book, Reinventing Professionals, on two different occasions at the Rico booth. And so that is a new thing this year that I'm doing, and I'll just tell you when that is happening because I find it so exciting. I'm going to be at the Rico booth from 1 to 2 on the Tuesday the 30th, and then again, if we don't run out of books, haha, 3 to 3:30 on the 31st. So yeah,
That is
I'm looking
exciting.
forward to it. I think it's fun, and
Oh,
I
I
yeah.
would come and get a Steinberg if I was there.
Well, I'll bring you one in
Yeah.
London. I was hoping to go to London for the Met game, to be honest, but my son can't go, so we're not going.
Mm.
Mets are playing the Phillies. Not that that means anything to you,
Well,
but
no, now I
it,
know everything about the Chiefs. That's another question.
that's well, we can talk baseball and football and just the whole thing. So
Oh, is
so
that a different game altogether?
uh, it's a different game, yes. Charting
Oh,
change in legal, not in sports.
don't
Sports
come
and
to me
stuff.
for American
Yeah.
game expertise. Ari, I can't wait to hear how it went. I'm really excited for you doing your book signing. And that is fab. You heard the dates here and the times here, folks. Go and support Ari. He's brilliant, and
Go
I
and
look
take a
forward to
free
hearing him.
book.
And also,
Thanks. A gift from Rico. Yeah. Well, Caroline, this is great. I look forward to watching your series. I look forward to promoting your series. I look forward to
thank
discussing
you.
your series on our next episode of Charting Change in
Shouting,
Legal.
changing legal. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.